All set, buddy? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I've been ready.
Friday, May 11th, 2018. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press, and each week I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. On today's show, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman resigns after explosive New Yorker article featuring 4 women who reveal Schneiderman is a serial abuser. Trump found a new best friend in the very honorable Kim Jong-Un. They'll have their bromance meet up in Singapore. It's all about the hair. 3 Americans freed from North Korea. That was a big victory for Trump and Melania, I guess. Pretty cool. Trump looks to gut chip program on the same day that Melania re-releases Obama pamphlet on cyberbullying under her name. Second time, by the way, that she's plagiarized something. First was Michelle Obama's speech. White House looking to hire private spies to counter deep state enemies. What? And Jeff Sessions wants to take kids from their parents at the borders. Go ahead. What's going to happen to them, Jeff Sessions?
You're going to the jail.
That's what he said. Massive University of California statewide strike and National Nurses United engage in a sympathy strike. When faced with the fact that, wait, you're not supposed to engage in sympathy strikes, they were like, too bad, here we go. Bernie Sanders introduced the Workplace Democracy Act. Woo! Historic wins for women in Tuesday's primaries across the country. Historic wins. And the mass murderer, Don Blankenship, not elected in West Virginia. Trump advisor says trouble with Nazis is they didn't keep going. Those are comments that he made at a Turning Point USA event. Just a mistake. Hugh Hewitt allowed to keep his job at MSNBC after the Washington Post reports that he was doing favors for Scott Pruitt. North Carolina teachers next up to go on strike. Fracking will probably cook the planet, but no one's listening. Rudy Guiliani resigns from his law firm. That resigns is in gigantic scare quotes after his multiple TV appearances and, basically giving up the game on the way that kind of mob bosses work. And we had a week filled with stories about white people calling the police on black people for living normal lives. We'll get to our Bernie Sanders and campaign wrap-up in our Pennsylvania segment today. That's right. Sean was out with Jess King, and I was up with Greg Edwards, up with Greg Edwards in Allentown. Amazing events. Dom Costa, the ever-progressive Dom Costa, he mounts a GOP write-in campaign because he's afraid that he is probably going to lose to Sarah Innamorato out there in the Democratic primary. And Innamorato and Lee, Summer Lee, who's also running out in kind of out west against the other Costa, right, are actually matching their funds and fundraising, right? Against the Costa machine, you've got these kind of like promoted progressives, and even supported by, oh my God, the DSA, right? And why should we let the DSA dictate the rules? Ask some Democrats. Well, because we need better Democrats is the answer. Organizing against gentrification in Pittsburgh. Welcome back to Lou Ryan. Lou Ryan is back on the RCP staff. Lou's got a great piece up there about some awesome community-based organizing that's going on, and she'll have her follow-up article. It'll be up today. Jordan Peterson If you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, it's about time to get up to speed on him. Jordan Peterson, the guy who has claimed that feminists have, quote, an unconscious wish for brutal male domination and who referred to developing nations as pits of catastrophe, he will be coming to the Tower Theater in Upper Darby. Yep. 3 words, he's a fuck. And we'll get into that. And Colleen Bradley and her legal team ready their writ of certiorari, if I can pronounce that right, for the U.S. Supreme Court. They are readying that, getting ready for the next step in their battle, their whistleblower battle that could roll back free speech rights, First Amendment rights in the workplace for everybody. We'll continue to follow that story. And today in our last call, we'll get into some beer and space news. We got CubeSats headed for Mars. Marco, hello. Space workers, I'm loving this. Space workers on strike at United Launch Alliance. Americans have fewer vacation times than your average medieval peasant. We'll talk about too as well. It's not exactly space news, but where else do you put this? And Free Will, they have Chasing the Dragon, was an awesome beer. Huge hoppy IPA. It was supposed to get released earlier this week. They changed it to today. The release is today on Friday. And they also have a great Dandelion Saison in the works. Check that out. Want to remind everybody to tune into the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org. You can also tune in on the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. If you missed the show, no problem. Go to thericksmithshow.com or just go to freespeech.org and look for the archives. Want to give a huge thank you to Colleen and Patricia for your generous donations and touching notes this week. I can guarantee you, and I can promise you, will keep investing in Pull No Punches Progressive Media. Also, a huge thank you to our latest member, Erin. She came in at the $10 a month level. Thank you, Erin. If you like what you hear, you too can support Pull No Punches Progressive Media. Become a member, just like Erin, of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. Not ready to become a member? Hey, no problem. You can make a one-time donation by going to ragingchickenpress.org and click on the Support and Membership tab. Click Donate and you'll be good to go. But your best bet, become a member. Patreon.com/rcpress. Become a member today. Well, there we have it, Sean. I think this has got to be one of the biggest weeks in news that we've had in a while. And that's saying something.
It's just like a lot of stupid shit. And not stupid shit, but like crazy shit that was going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like it ranges, right? It ranges from stuff
from like the outlandish.
Yeah, and outland and like, but it's like everything. I agree with you. Like everything is kind of on the outlandish edge, but some of it is like outlandish in terms of it just makes you go like, what the hell is happening in the world? And other stuff that's outlandish is like serious political outlandishness, right? I mean, it's just it's out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, like, where do we want to start?
Well, I don't know. You ever have that feeling that you're standing at the top of the hill, you sit down, and then you start to roll down the hill, and you pick up speed, and then you got no choice because you can't stop after that? That's kind of where it feels like we're at. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Let's start with a couple of the stuff that we can just get out of the way pretty quickly. I mean, just let's look at the Trump crap this week real fast, because it's like I don't want to say a whole lot about the stuff. It's all over the news. But number one, big, we see that we have 3 Americans, and this is a big deal. I mean, 3 Americans were freed from North Korea. They were being detained in prisons in North Korea. They had all taught at North Korean universities. And Trump and Melania flew up to Alaska to meet them in the nighttime as they were released. And, apparently he got them released. Okay, that's a good thing. And then on the heels of that, we find out that they're going to the summit that has been promised between Trump and Kim Jong-Un is going to happen in Singapore. And Trump seems to have found his new kind of best friend in the his big hair friend, I guess.
Are they going to find Obama's birth certificates over there?
I don't know, but from what I understand, in Singapore, there's this giant room, right? There's nothing but beds and people willing to pee on them. So I think that we might get some camera action out of this one. So it's kind of it's
some
a little
cucking in action.
It's a little twist on the Roman vomitoriums, right? So I mean, whatever. But what was what's crazy about this is that the foreign policy apparatus look at this and say, the only one who's winning out of this one right now is Kim Jong-Un, because he's getting kind of legitimized on a national score, right? A national,
which is like what people don't want to have happen.
Right, exactly. And Trump is basically out there now in speech. He's been saying to the cameras, he's like, I think he really wants to do something. He's very honorable, very honorable.
It's a very honorable man.
There you go. He's a very honorable man. So there's your place to start, right? And so we've got that stuff going on in the international stage. At the same time, I'd even talk about this in the intro.
The Iran deal.
Well, yeah, you got the Iran deal, right? Which he just scuttled the Iran deal, right? Which is, who the hell knows was that going to lead? What we do know is that after he scuttles the Iran deal, reportedly, Iran launches missiles over into Israel in the Golan Heights. Israel starts bombing, quote unquote, like Iranian outpost in Syria, right? And okay, so that's where we are now. Now we've actually got active shooting between Israel and Iran, right? Okay, that worked.
We're just lobbing some missiles at each other.
What the hell? What's a few dozen people? Who cares, right? But that's it. Like, again, what this leads to, and I don't know.
World War III might break out soon.
Yeah, I just think of like World War I, right? It starts with what? The assassination of a prince, right? So, stranger things can happen. So where this is going to go, frankly, I don't think anybody actually knows at this point, right? I know people are scared about a lot of different possibilities, and they should be. But, Trump is all about, I promised I was going to pull out the Iran deal, and I kept my promise. Okay, that's great. So now that we have what everyone has agreed upon as being kind of one of the best instances of international diplomacy in decades is now scuttled. And now you basically
want to fuck over Obama's legacy.
That's all it is. That's all it is. And then what the consequence of that is.
It's just shitting on the black man's legacy because we ran.
Yep. And because of the racism in this country, and because of the racism in the Republican Party, and because of the racism in Donald Trump, is like we've got to scuttle any possibility of actually being a good actor on the international stage. Because you think about it like this.
We have to erase everything that Obama has done over his 8-year legacy as president.
Well, look at this. You're looking at...
And go further. And let's just take the 20th century while we're at it.
Yeah, exactly. Throw it right down the tubes. Why not? And you can imagine on the international stage, you got people who are sitting there looking, say, okay, wait, let me get this straight. We spent years negotiating this deal, right? It's been one of the best enforceable deals, most transparent deals that we've kind of been able to come through as a collective, right? So we did this international diplomacy and we did all this stuff. And so you sign on to that, and you're telling me you guys can go and now elect a nut job president and scuttle the whole deal because you don't feel like it anymore. Why should we engage in any kind of diplomacy with you again? Right? And Trump was out there talking about how both when the detainees were released and he met them and he talked about it then and in other venues, United States is respected again on the international stage. We're a joke right now. We're a joke. Like the guy can't even run the government. He can't keep people in positions of like authority for more than a few months at a time at best, and he thinks that's respected globally. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah, and like you have like Angela Merkel, who's like now the head of the free world.
Yeah,
like,
I mean she's like does her best not to laugh in his presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are watching the decline of our country.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But you know what?
At least I know how the Romans felt.
Yeah, you go. You're sitting down and watch it burn. Watch it burn. It's crazy. So then, on the other kind of like craziness, I mean, I don't even think we have the mental space to go into all the minutia around the Michael Cohen case and what's actually emerged this week. But one of the things that was most disturbing for me was that, there was this story that came out in The Intercept this week. It was Jeremy Scahill and Matthew Cole, right? And I'm just going to read the intro paragraph. This is from their article in The Intercept. It says, the Trump administration is considering a set of proposals developed by Blackwater founder Eric Prince and a retired CIA officer. Do I really need to continue reading? Oh, yes, I do. Because wait till you see what happens next in the next clause of the sentence. I'm going to start this over again, okay? The Trump administration is considering a set of proposals developed by Blackwater founder Eric Prince and a retired CIA officer with assistance from Oliver North, a key figure in the Iran-Contra scandal and the new president of the NRA, right? To provide the CIA director Mike Pompeo and the White House with a global private spy network that would circumvent official U.S. intelligence agencies, according to several current and former U.S. intelligence officials and others familiar with the proposal. That's the first sentence of this freaking story. All right?
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Oh, my God. I mean, you're talking about... These are things you used to read about, right? I mean, I guess it's fitting. Like in today's last call, we're going to talk about how we have less free time than they did back in feudalism, because this kind of crap is the stuff that you see in Game of Thrones, right? And you got your freaking militias, right? These are kind of like hired assassins. These are kind of like now hired spy network, a private spy network. And the fact that you got Eric Prince, brother of like DeVos, of Betsy DeVos, right? Just let's keep that going, right? We got brother of Betsy DeVos, right? From founder of Blackwater, who was found with, that organization that was, part of all sorts of war crimes in Iraq, with Oliver North, a guy who was a gun runner for Iran in a secret deal that he was prosecuted for during the Reagan administration, has got together with our current guy, Mike Pompeo, right, and the Trump White House, and saying, let's have this private spy network.
And you know what, like you posted something like early on in the week about like Ollie North and like how the 80s are coming back and everything. I mean, like it's the same group of fucking people in the Republican Party going back to like fucking Watergate.
Yes.
Like the people involved with the Watergate break-in and robbery and everything. These people have been elevated so far high up the power chain of the Republican Party since that time, especially with like the Bush administration and the Reagan administration, that these people are now like fucking still running the world.
Yeah, that's exactly
They're still running the fucking world. And they're the most incompetent, amoral group of fucking pricks out there. And, and they're running the world.
Felony also.
It's like, no, seriously. I love it. It's like, we got Ollie North. What happened? What should happen with Ollie North?
You're going to the jail.
Right, that's what should happen. What's going to happen to Pompeo?
You're going to the jail.
Oh my God! Do we have more war criminals in there?
That's a felony also.
This is kind of. That's it, Sean. You're absolutely right. We've got we got a criminal syndicate.
Retreads of fucking amoral assholes going back to the Reagan administration, and they're just still running the world. I mean, now, the monster they've created on the outside with like the racism and stuff like that, going back to the 1960s with like the Southern strategy. Yeah, I mean, like it's coming full circle now. Like they're these people have been running the party, but also now they're allowing the racists, the white nationalists, and the other people to also have a fucking seat at that table.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Hey, welcome. We're a big tent.
Yeah.
We're the Big Ten of Republican Party. We'll take libertarian nut jobs and kind of like neo-Nazis. Come on. We're not going to turn anyone away. Sit down, have your meal, grab a cup of coffee.
Speaking about Nazis.
Speaking of Nazis. Yeah, this is great. There's a little. Hey, take it away, Sean.
A Trump advisor says the trouble with Nazis is that they didn't keep on going back during the Holocaust; they stopped. And this is a Turning Point USA event.
Yeah, so here it is. This is from Think Progress, right? So in a Snapchat video obtained by Mediaite, right? Juan Pablo Andrade, I guess. Juan Pablo Andrade, a former Trump campaign advisor who now works for the pro-Trump dark money group America First Policies, expresses support for Nazis, saying his only criticism is that they didn't do more. Quote, this is what he said in that video, quote, the only thing the Nazis didn't get right is they didn't keep fucking going, Andrade said in the video that was recorded during, wait for it, a Turning Point USA conference held last December in West Palm Beach, Florida. There you go.
Is it like near Key Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, there's probably a tunnel right in between the two. I'm serious. So let's remember, if you're not recalling, everybody, Turning Point USA are the very people who had that conference at IUP a few weeks back, right? That we talked about on this show. Right, these are these nut jobs that are attempting, that have got millions and millions of dollars being funneled into their organization as a way of kind of like gaining a foothold for these kind of policies and this kind of mindset
on
college campuses. Exactly.
And, I think it's just like a misunderstanding.
Yeah. He just misspoke. What he was saying, Sean.
What he meant to say
was he realizes that was probably a historic impossibility that the Nazis could have done more because they really were outgunned. But he was just engaged in a little speculative fiction about what would happen. Because, frankly, nobody would be talking about the Holocaust now if the Nazis had won. Right? The problem is...
No, because we'd all be speaking German.
Exactly, right? And then we wouldn't have the problems of racism. We wouldn't have the problem of sexism.
What's that TV show that's on the Showtime on demand, or not Showtime?
No, you're talking about Man in the White Castle.
Yeah, Man in the High Castle.
High Castle.
Yeah, Man in the High Castle. The eastern half goes to Germany. The western half goes to Japan, and then it's just like that.
Yeah, this is a guy, right? This is a guy who watches that show, and he's just like, man, what could have been. I mean, the guy who's identifying with the shock troops who are assassinating people, right? I mean, what happens? How do you get to some place in your fucking life when you're kind of identifying with the criminals and the assassins and the torturers? Right? I mean, that's who these people are identifying with.
And the best thing about this guy is Hispanic. He's a brown person. And he would have been in the fucking ovens if he was in Germany at the time.
Yep. We are so far beyond any sense of rational thought when we start seeing this kind of crap. I mean, look, we've been there for a while. Right? We've been there for a while. This is not new. But here
we've been there for about 30, 40 years now. Since the Powell memo, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, this has been that direction, right? We've seen that, and this has been, you have the Powell memo about what to do on the kind of economic and the ideological front. You've got kind of Republicans the Republican Party, let's be clear, Republican Party have been cozying up with and helping
the Fairness Doctrine,
flames.
Not reauthorizing.
What's that?
Not reauthorizing the Fairness Doctrine back in the 80s.
Exactly. This has been a steady march towards kind of like what you always say with Daryl Metcalf, right? He's the drug that the party just can't get off of, right? They kind of keep on taking their hit, keep on getting their hit back with Metcalf. They can't expunge him because they benefit from his craziness.
Yes.
Nuts, man. I'm telling you. And it's crazy that we have to have these stories that come out to remind people, right? Because I mean, watch the kind of slide back into normality where people are thinking...
Like your party's becoming literally fucking ran by Nazis.
Yes. I mean, this is not hyperbole anymore, people. This is actually what's happening.
I mean, we talked about this last week. 40% of the Republicans in California fucking supported Patrick Little.
Right, exactly.
Who showed up to the Republican GOP conference this week and was kicked out.
Yep.
In Pennsylvania, he would have been given a Senate Education Committee chair.
Yes. Exactly.
Or House State Government Committee chair.
I think what we need
not neo-Nazi on the... Oh, you have neo-Nazi on your resume. Okay, we have this chair position over here in the Senate that's going to be open because John Eichelberger's leaving.
Yeah,
so, yes, you can
Eichelberger, we'll bring this guy in and be like, I think what we need is a total overhaul of the educational system. Hi, I mean, hello. I mean, we must stop this appeasement, right? I mean, this is kind of like, holy crap, man. I mean, I don't know.
And it's funny, like, seeing Republicans, like, being confronted with the shit that they've created up close and personal. Like, 5 years ago, like, yeah, they had to face the Tea Party, but do you ever think, like, they'd be blocking actual Nazis trying to take over their party from party conferences?
Yeah, tell me.
Go play with your fidget finner.
That's what I gotta say. No, exactly.
I mean, they have to, like, keep a Nazi out from their annual conference, who will probably be running for U.S. Senate as a U.S. for U.S. Senate in California.
That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. So yeah. So there we go. We got Nazis like saying they didn't. We had Nazis saying that the Nazis didn't go far enough. Right, and they're working for a Trump dark money group, right? And because speaking out at a kind of like right-wing dark money group that attempting to take over college campuses. There you go. We've got
a nonprofit.
Of course. Sean, it's not partisan to demand the extermination of non-white people. I mean, that's not partisan. You don't have to be a Republican. They accept Democrats too.
It's an educational opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Educational. What's that classified under? Educational, like nonprofit, the C4s.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you're in the public interest.
Right, exactly. So remember, folks, your tax dollars are paying for this. So just so you know. So one last thing before we talk about some of the two things actually before we start talking about some of the cool stuff going on this week. Is that one, like the Hugh Hewitt story? That's always an interesting one.
Fucking scumbag.
Yeah. So, I mean, here,
this is coming from the Democratic liberal media. Hugh Hewitt,
right?
The conservative hack who got a job after Trump got elected on MSNBC.
Right. This was, I'm just forgetting the guy's name. Who's the head of MSNBC? Who basically, who hired
fired Overman.
Right. Fired. Well, yeah, exactly. It's been this kind of like slow march towards getting rid of progressive voices on MSNBC. And not branding the channel in that way, but wanting to have it like more people involved, right? So they've been bringing on these more conservatives.
I think Dave Rubin's going to be on there next pretty soon.
I wouldn't doubt it, man.
Him and Sam Stein.
Sam Stein. Bring him on, man. Bring him on. Let's have this little thought experiment, Sean. We'll have a thought experiment. What would it be like if the Nazis had won? I'm not saying I support the Nazis. I'm saying I'm just wondering what it would be like if they won. Let's talk about that, shall we? Right? I'm not saying that black people are genetically inferior. I just think maybe we should just think about the science and wonder what could be. I mean, this is.
Do you think the South would have been better off if they won the Civil War?
Sean, that's an intriguing question. Let's talk about that. Crazy. But so you got Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt, if you don't know, I mean, if you don't know, you'd know him when you saw him. He's the white hair guy from, Wisconsin, I guess was. He had his radio show out of there. He's well known, kind of like super conservative radio talk show host, got his shows and all this kind of stuff. He first kind of got this big national stage, especially during the 2016 election, where they brought him on, and he was a commentator on MSNBC and some other networks too as well. And then he's got his show. So turns out that they find out, the Washington Post reports that actually Hugh Hewitt was doing favors for Scott Pruitt. Right, Scott Pruitt, who you remember, the head director of the EPA, who's got about
in case you need to be reminded,
right, who's got about 11 investigations going against him for all sorts of corruption, and who's like at the same time gutting the EPA. On the door. Yeah, exactly. I mean, throwing our planet down the toilet, right? And MSNBC says, looks at Hugh Hewitt and finds out that he's been doing favors for Scott Pruitt, even though he's been not disclosing that publicly, and they say, it's a mulligan. Let's give him another chance. Everybody deserves another chance, Sean. Keeps his job.
I mean, come on now. I mean, look at Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity still has a job.
Yeah, well, Sean Hannity, man. He brings in the ratings, man. Makes the money. Cha-ching! And like speaking of making money, right? There were some consequences this week from Rudy. Right, Rudy. He got really busy with the Trump campaign, so I guess he had to resign from his law firm, right?
Yeah. It looks like he resigned willingly with the gun to the back of his head.
Absolutely. After serious consideration, Rudy Giuliani decided that he needed to resign. Right?
Maybe talk about like wiring money to people, mistresses or.
Right, so I just got to read. So, and the New York Post was great on this, right? So I want to read you just the first couple lead paragraphs of this one because I just love it. So this is their lead story. Their story was Rudy Giuliani resigns from law firm over TV appearances, right? So it says Rudy Giuliani resigned from his law firm after his partners got fed up with his bloviating defense of President Trump during a series of over-the-top media appearances. A new report said Thursday. The ex-mayor took a leave of absence in April from the firm Greenberg Traurig to defend Trump in special counsel Mueller's Russia probe and other controversies, including the $130,000 payoff to porn star Stormy Daniels. But the firm said Thursday that he had quit the day before, the New York Post reported. So basically, it's like apparently the firm got really pissed off, right? That Rudy Giuliani said, "Yeah, I do this all the time. I have pass-throughs. I do that. I take care of people. It's what you do when you have important clients. You pay off porn stars, right? You pay off their mistresses and things like this, and you don't tell them about it." And the firm is like, "No. That's kind of illegal. You're gonna lose your license over that stuff. So maybe you
that we did not do that here.
Right.
That does not happen here.
Right. So they're just saying, like Rudy, there's two ways we can do this.
Rudy was just being Rudy and just speaking off the top of his head. Didn't know what he was really saying, but we don't do that. We don't engage in that activity here.
No,
we're not trying to go to jail or anything.
Exactly. So his firm is like,
we don't want any more unwanted attention.
Right. So his firm is kind of like, Rudy, we can do this one of two ways. You can write a letter or we can write a letter. So then Rudy resigns, right? So he's like, man, unbelievable. So that's on that side of things, right? On the insane side. But at the same time, there's some really kind of amazing stuff that are going on this week. I mean, one, let's start with primaries on Tuesday. I mean, that was pretty kind of impressive. I mean, we got historic wins for women in Tuesday's primaries, like across the country. One of the women who won was out of Indiana, I want to say. Was someone who was one of the who was an accuser of Trump, right? Who came forward and said that she had been sexually harassed by Donald Trump too as well, and she won her primary. So I mean that was kind of pretty impressive. People are starting to call this a pink wave, right? Which is pretty incredible. But this is from Newsweek. So this was kind of that night of the midterms. 17 female candidates were projected winners in their House races in Indiana, North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia. This is according to Newsweek's counts. And that's out of the 23 House races that have at least one female candidate running. One woman, Ohio Democratic candidate Susan Moran Palmer, was leading in a House race that had yet to be called, and 5 races saw women defeated in their bids for party's nomination. So, and I'm not sure where that race ended up yet, but so you're talking about 17 out of 23 races in which women were running in their primaries where they won. That's huge, right? And we've seen the same thing right here in Pennsylvania, where we've had a huge, enormous uptick of women kind of on the backs of the Me Too movement, on the backs of Trump being elected, at a self-proclaimed like sexual harasser, and just out and out sexist. That has kind of like brought women forward, and we've been reporting on this all throughout the year. So that was a huge election night win. And at the same time, what? Go ahead. Sorry.
I got another big piece of news.
Another piece of news. Yeah.
Don Blankenship and the China people did not win his primary.
You mean despite that incredibly persuasive media campaign that he ran? I'm Don Blankenship, and Mitch McConnell's been a little too friendly with the China.
I mean, like
people.
that's just as bad as like Rick Saccone's media online media presence.
No, exactly. I can't remember who said this, but I don't know. I saw this. I'm like,
I watched like the one video. It's just like it just went from like panning in to like cutting in. It's like hard cuts too, back and forth, in and out, close and far. I was just like.
No, I think this was Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks in the Majority Report this week were talking about, or a couple weeks ago when that video first got released from Blankenship, where he was like, I want to say that Mitch McConnell is very too close with the China people, right? And what they said, I think they're dead on with this. Is like, if someone were to try to come up with like the worst stereotype, right, of an Appalachian person that was completely wrong, right, that was like so over the top that would get them fired from the job, that would not be as over the top as the Blankenship model was, right? I mean, it's like, there were people in Appalachia. I'm sure this is one of the reasons why he lost this race too, as well, is because it's like, even if for those people who were like, I don't care, I just need a Republican, you just got to have this, or I need this kind of this guy because he's like mean and blah blah blah. Even those folks were like, "Whoa, man, you got to represent. If you're not going to represent, then fuck you." Like there's no way. That has got to be one of the worst political ads I've ever seen in history. That one and the like, Connor's got a little lamb, or no, Nancy's got a little lamb. That one,
yeah,
that was another one of the atrocious ones. But yeah, so that was big. Blankenship kind of did not get the nod in West Virginia.
I mean, for being like worth so much fucking money, you'd think he would be able to put a little bit more money behind the production of these things.
Well, he's like any autocrat, right? I mean, the thing is that he's not. He thinks he can do it all by himself.
I mean, it's like Paul Mango. If you're.
Yeah, we got to talk a little. We didn't mention this in the intro. We should talk a little bit about the PA primaries coming up because. I know we were already going to talk about some of it, but the governor's race has been interesting. So, but we'll get to that in the next segment. So we've got that. Now, the big news this week, of course, was their massive strikes. The 3-day strike in the University of California system was unreal. It was unreal for several reasons. One, the fact that there's been a breakdown in negotiations, right? That and they're like, you know what, we're about tired, and people.
And they want students to take over these jobs,
right? They want students to replace workers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are problematic. So they call a 3-day strike, and it was a massive, like, statewide strike. My favorite part about this, right? One of my favorite parts about this, National Nurses United. Right, we're like sitting there because look, some of these people, the people who were on strike, because wasn't faculty that were on strike, right? These were kind of like support staff, kind of nurses' aides, a whole bunch of kind of people across the system that worked to support that system. They were on strike, and National Nurses United were like, we work with these people, and their contract wasn't there. It wasn't the nurses' contract, but they were like, we're not gonna stand by and like cross picket lines. Nope, we're gonna go out on a sympathy strike along with them, right? Even though sympathy strikes are not legal, right? They're going to do it anyways, right? And they did, right? Went out en masse, right, to support their brothers and sisters on strike, right? And again, this was a perfect example of National Nurses United looking at West Virginia, looking at Oklahoma, looking at Arizona, all these teachers who walked off the job in right-to-work states where they were not allowed, they did not have the right to strike, and they went anyway because they recognize that is really the origin of power, not this behind-the-scenes political maneuvering, not the relationship that the president of the union has with the most extreme kind of like people in their state legislators or with their governor. No, that's not what's most important. What's most important, the organization of the people. And there was a great piece this week this is last month in Labor Notes about kind of this is what it's going to take to stand up in a Janus era. And I think, personally, any union who's at this point who is not thinking about the organizing model, like the ground up membership involvement, the candidates and the people on the ground that are going to be able to kind of mobilize and organize in a post-Janus world, if we are not having that first and foremost in our minds as we're moving forward, then we're making a huge mistake. And I think that's what the National Nurses United saw out there in University of California. They're like, nope, we are prepping for that world, which will be here after June. So, I mean, I thought it was incredible, Sean. I thought it was an absolutely incredible move.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then meanwhile, right, we also have, looks like North Carolina teachers are next up.
Yeah, it's spreading like wildfire, and it has no sign of stopping either.
Yeah, so we have it right here. This is kind of just from CNN. Say the nationwide fight for more school funding is now swept in North Carolina, where teachers are planning to skip school and to confront lawmakers next week. May 16th, when the legislature comes back into session, hundreds of schools will be closed while students, while teachers join the March for Students and Rally for Respect in Raleigh. Unlike similar protests in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Arizona, teachers are planning to use a personal day and rally for just one day in the state capitol. Right. So here's what they're doing. Right. They're basically all coordinating the use of their personal days, right, in order to go to the state capitol. Lots of these school districts shutting down. Look, there's going to be no teachers here because they're mobilizing so much. And what this amounts to is basically a shot across the bow. It's saying, we're ready. Right. We're going to show you that we're ready. Right. And so we're going to show up there in force. Students, teachers, community members, family members are all going to converge on the Capitol and say, this is what you're going to be up against. Your call. Either you deliver the proper funding to kind of state schools or to university. To our education, to public education. Even you listen to the kind of demands that are kind of like from students, from teachers, from faculty, from community members, or else we're going on strike. So kudos to them. We'll be watching that next week. That's pretty awesome. Another thing that we just want to kind of, talk about this like real briefly. Bernie Sanders introduced the Workplace Democracy Act too as well. This is pretty incredible. And what that means is basically this. I'll get what it would do. Here's the 2 points of it. It would make it easier for workers to form unions through a majority sign-up process. This was basically what Obama should have signed, right? On his day one in office, that basically is saying, okay, excuse me, that workers, instead of having to go through this long election process, that if they sign up for a card saying, yes, I want a union, they get a majority, then they get the union, and then the employers are then forced to bargain with the workers in that case. Why is this important? Because what has happened in this the process as it stands right now is that it is so heavily weighted towards employers, and that it gives them every opportunity to wage kind of strong anti-union campaigns for an extended period of time, as opposed to actually having to negotiate with the workers. So that's number one, Workplace Democracy Act. Number two, it would ensure that companies can't prevent a union from forming by denying a first contract. Right. So that's what I was kind of getting at there too as well. They would have to begin negotiating with 10 days after certification for the union. Right. That is where we should be. As we should have been this. Employee Free Choice Act is exactly what unions had been pushing for. Obama seemed to express his interest in kind of supporting that, but then when he got in office, never touched it once. So Bernie Sanders is introducing that back in here, and he's the first to say that, look, we recognize that this is what this does. We don't think that this has a 90% chance of getting through, right? But what we're doing now is we're preparing to change that conversation, right? Looking forward to 2018 and 2020 down the road, how we are going to push this conversation, and this is the vision, right? So imagine that. We have a person in Congress that's actually putting forth a vision, an agenda that could actually kind of really improve the lives of everyone. So kudos to Sanders. Last thing, Sean, what's up with these white people?
Why are you being racist towards white people?
What's up with all these white people, man? There, a lot of white people calling police this week. What's up with that?
Calling police on black people doing normal things.
Yeah, what's up? I mean, I don't even know what to do with that.
You're the one who put it in there, but okay. So there's a couple of stories that happened this week.
You were talking about it.
We were talking about beforehand. Saying Jesus, what are this shit? Stupid shit, people calling the cops on black people because they're using a charcoal grill in a park in Oakland. And then there was that one in Yale. The Yale law student fell asleep in a common room, and she had the cops called on her. And apparently this woman called the cops on a black person, a black student,
not student.
a black student, a female African American female student, before one of this lady's friends, and decided to call the cops on this lady, and she started recording her and really put her in an awkward situation.
Yeah, I'll say.
Like, yeah, you're about to become famous.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be everywhere. right, exactly. Can you say I'm trending, right? On that, I mean, it's incredible. Imagine that, a student in a lounge in a dorm falling asleep at the end of the school year,
writing a paper.
Right. That's definitely suspicious, Sean.
Yes.
And barbecuing in a park. You guys see some white person was sitting there going like this: black people don't barbecue. Something's wrong.
Not in this park.
Oh my God, freaking crazy. So that's where we are, folks. White people calling the police on black people for living normal lives, right? That's where we are.
Thank you, Donald Trump.
Thank you, Donald Trump, and all you people who put him into office. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So anyways, all right, I think we should take a break. What do you say?
Yes.
We've only gone on for, an hour and a half now? That's great. All right, so this
actually
is...
38 minutes, 39 minutes.
Not too bad. Yeah, we've been trying, folks. We've been trying. All right, Sean gives me the kind of like, come on, wrap it up, you freak. Let's sign every once in a while. But there we go.
I got a stopwatch going.
He's got a stopwatch going. Well, he basically said if we went too long, then
you're going to the jail.
And I said, okay, Sean. That's what goes on. You're going, and I do have to mention that's from the reason. Oh, I can't believe it. I mentioned Sessions wants to steal children away from their parents at the border if they cross the border. That's where that's kind of from. This is one of the things he said. If you bring your children across the border, we're going to take them away from you, just like the law says. And if you don't want us taking your children, don't bring your children across the border, or otherwise you're
going to the jail. That's a felony also.
Yeah, that was a great moment in American history. All right, where's the Japanese camps? That's what I have to say. That's where he's taking us back. All right, so this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. I want to thank you for tuning in for segment 1. And I want to remind you to become a member of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress. That's patreon.com/rcpress and become a member today. We'll be right back. Oh, what's that?
Please stick around for the second session.
Yes, please stick around for the second session. I know there's a lot of people that Sean knows out there who come up to him and says, I can't stand it. You guys just go on and on. Like,
I was going to say the second session should be pretty spirited.
Yeah, it should be a little fun. So a couple things that got under our skin this week. And there's some kind of cool stuff, too, as well. So we'll be back with that. And we're going to hear about, Sean got to use his fancy new lens, right, this past week. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, all right? This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Become a member of Raging Chicken at patreon.com/rcpress. We will be back right after this break.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1967. That was the day United Farm Workers Sons of Zapata joined with the Confederation of Mexican Workers in establishing an international picket line across the Rio Grande Valley. A push to organize farm workers at 6 major growers began the year before, in the spring of 1966. Wages in Starr County ranged from 40 to 85 cents an hour. Farm workers began their strike in June of 1966 for wage increases and union recognition. But growers would rather see their crops rot than recognize the union. They did grant wage increases, but immediately ran to the courts for injunctions. One district judge outlawed all picketing, while police instructed county workers to spray the strikers with insecticide. That August, workers voted to organize with the United Farm Workers and began a pilgrimage march to the state capitol to popularize their cause. 15,000 workers and their supporters reached Austin on Labor Day to demand their right to organize. They returned to Starr County to continue their strike. The growers turned to Mexican commuters holding green cards to break the strike. The United Farm Workers began picketing at Roma and Rio Grande City bridges and were often successful in turning back green card workers. By May 1967, melon harvest had begun. After months of negotiations, picket lines went up on both sides of the international bridges. The picketing was 100% successful for 2 days, but the Mexican government and Starr County Sheriff's Department soon intervened to break up the picket lines. Texas Rangers were brought in to arrest and brutalize strikers. The strike was broken, but organizing continued throughout the region. Picketing across borders was itself an important act of international solidarity. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
That's right, everybody. So fancy, so fancy. Sean got to break out his fancy rented lens for the Bernie Sanders Jess King rally out in Lancaster. And I have to say, Sean, holy moly, what great shots.
Yes. I rented an $1,800 lens for like $70 for a few days, and it was really, it was nice. I was going to say, I got some good pictures.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, they were fantastic. I mean, the shots of I told you, Mike, one of my favorites is that shot that you have of Bernie Sanders up against a huge kind of Just King banner. That blue background is just great. I mean, you can see like little tiny wisps of hair on Bernie. So,
and one of the things I love about like the so like with a wide angle lens, like little technical thing here, real quick, but like with a wide angle lens, you would get like the foreground and like you would see the distance between him and the banner, right? With a telephoto lens, everything gets pushed together. Like you can't tell difference. I think like you can't see like depth.
Uh-huh.
And I think like what made that picture so good was there's just like a little bit of depth added to it with like it being off centered from the podium, and that podium gives it like a little bit of like space.
Yep.
And it just draws your eye into like Sanders's like pointing to the crowd in like the angry Bernie mode.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So remind everybody, so this past weekend, we had the kind of the barnstorming Bernie, right? So Bernie was in Pennsylvania in support of several candidates. He was started the morning at like 10:30 or something, right? In Lancaster. In Lancaster for Jess King. Then went out to Allentown for Greg Edwards. I was up at the Greg Edwards rally with my son, actually. My son came out and took some pictures too as well, which was awesome. Then he went down to Philadelphia for a rally with John Fetterman, which was amazing. And what I didn't, I don't think we talked about this last week, but the night before, he was actually in Philadelphia taking part in a forum on criminal justice reform with Larry Krasner and a group of other folks and community leaders. And that I actually watched a good chunk of that, and that was fantastic too as well. So Sean, why don't you start us off? Well, just give us that sense of what that rally was like out there in Lancaster at the Just King rally.
I was sort of amazed thinking back on it. By far the biggest rally I attended since moving out here to Harrisburg. The stuff on the Capitol steps are pretty nice size and all. Like, there's that one union rally last year. It was big, but it's bussing people in.
Yeah. Like,
the largest community rally was probably that one, and the Muslim rally after right when I got my camera, and right when Trump came up with the Muslim ban.
Right.
And there was a spontaneous rally a couple of days later that Lancaster Stands Up put on, and it was in the main park next to their market. And that was like 3,000 people. This was 2,000 people, and it shows you that Republicans should be fucking scared in rural parts of the country this year. And it's also a roadmap of how Democrats, should be organizing places like Lancaster City. Should be organizing out here in Harrisburg. Should be organizing Altoona and Johnstown and Erie and Scranton, York, like all these smaller cities across the state, because there's where people matter. Like, there's people who live there who've sort of been like written off and forgotten about. I mean, Lancaster City's always been considered a Republican area. Well, that's changing real quickly. And I think, it's a big fucking deal having Bernie Sanders in the middle of South Central Pennsylvania. And I think, having him out in rural PA, I mean, when I say Central PA, I mean, say if this was 45 minutes north of Harrisburg, and it was someone else running in a seat like this, and yeah, he probably would have been up there too.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt about it.
I mean, he's pretty much went to places that Clinton didn't even bother going to in the primary this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. It was incredible. I mean, I think that.
Hillary Clinton only came out to Harrisburg, and that was right before the election.
Yep.
Before that, it was only Bill Clinton came out to Central PA.
Yeah, Bill Clinton, and we know how that went.
Yeah.
You damn kids. You damn kids.
And it just goes to show you that, a group of people prioritized Central Pennsylvania and rural PA, and a group of people didn't. And the people who prioritized Central Pennsylvania won.
Right.
And they're now president of the United States.
Right.
Because of that.
No, exactly. And I think...
I know. And it shows you, Sanders is prioritizing, not just the big cities, but, the work that Lancaster Stands Up has been doing over the past year. If they haven't been doing the work that they've been doing, Bernie Sanders doesn't come out here.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think that, the fact, we should always remember that this is not just that there's some candidate is progressive and Bernie Sanders is coming out here to do this. No, it's exactly what you just pointed to, is that there has been organizing that has been going on.
This is a year and a half of organizing.
Yes, exactly. And even more than that, right? Because let's remember, Lancaster Stand Up, right? They had organizers who had been working on anti-pipeline stuff, for long before it was just about the election, right?
Yeah.
So you've got organizing that has been going on for quite some time.
And these are people who are involved with the organizing, worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign. These people who worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign got involved with the pipelines movement, got involved with Lancaster Stands Up, and now they're working on the Jess King campaign.
Yep.
And it shows you what organizing does.
Well, you know what I have to say, especially with the Jess King campaign, is one of the things that was good that her challenger kind of stepped out was that what that did is that we didn't get into a drama of kind of like a rehash of Hillary versus Bernie all over again, right? That this really allowed us to kind of focus on Jess King's policy, because she's no joke, right? It's not just she's I'm running the Bernie thing. No, she's a fantastic organizer. She's it's kind of old school kind of political action, meaning she's actually working and talking with people, right? And she's coming out of that movement. So the power base, right, the organizational base she's been part of building that. Right. So I think that, the fact that we see her there and Sanders kind of coming out to support her. We see Greg Edwards in Allentown. Edwards has been, he's been a force in the community, right, for decades. And it's because of the way, well, I wouldn't say because of it, one of the contributing factors, one of the significant contributing factors that has caused, I would say, political atrophying in the Lehigh Valley for a long time has to do with the way that those districts were kind of gerrymandered up, right? So that you didn't have a coherent political body, right? So if you looked at Charlie Dent's district, right, that he's stepping down from now, when he was there, it was just kind of like this long strip.
Cut through Lebanon County, cut through the Lehigh Valley, exactly, all the way out to Harrisburg.
Right. It just followed Route 222, right? It followed kind of 22 and 222, and it was on either side of the highway, and it was a way to kind of, privilege Republican voters, right? Which meant privileging white voters and then kind of having just enough of the kind of immigrant communities and kind of African-American communities and Hispanic communities cut off of that would kind of disconnect them from other. And
then cities like Allentown get cut up in two different ways. They're cut up three ways, and they have no representation at all.
Exactly. And so now with the new maps is that we've got the Lehigh Valley, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton all together, right? Which is how they operate and how they function practically, but now as a kind of political body. And this is the kind of this is the kind of environment in which Greg Edwards, has been working in, right? And you talk about a grassroots campaign. And one thing the big question I had when I was going to the Greg Edwards rally was how many people are going to show up for this just
Just
to see
because Bernie.
Right. And again, that was the real question in my head. It's like, how much of this is going to be just about celebrity, and how much is this, are we going to see the Edwards campaign? And I got to say, I was blown away, right? Because, the people I talked to, I mean, I just, as people are kind of coming in the doors, just talking about this stuff, is like person after person after person were saying that not only were they there,
Oh, yeah, I'm voting for Greg Edwards.
Not just I'm voting for Greg Edwards, I've been knocking doors for him. Right, I've been on the campaign. I've been volunteering for him, right? And they're telling me stories about, oh yeah, Greg has been around. I go to his church, right? I go to his, I mean, the campaign is amazing, and it's highly energized. And like, you look at who was in that room too, as well. It's like that was the other thing. It was the Lehigh Valley, right? It's like it wasn't just like a bunch of white folks or a bunch of guys.
A bunch of progressive, hippie hipsters from
exactly
Easton, Allentown, or the main centers of these towns.
Exactly. And, and what Edwards is testing here, right? I mean, what Edwards' campaign is testing here is that, like, can we redo the narrative about the Lehigh Valley and, like, bring people together? And one of the biggest messages that Sanders brought, right, was basically like, look, you've got two things, right? The two things about kind of taking back American democracy has everything to do with, number one, he said, the same message. Edwards said the same thing. I can't do it alone. This is not about me. This is about all of us. And that's his campaign, right? All of us or none of us. This is how we move forward. And man, people are bought in. And every indication is that his ground game is absolutely incredible. And so, we'll see. So again, the primary is coming up on Tuesday, and then we've got Jess King. We got Jess King out in Lancaster. I mean, she's running unopposed, but in the Lehigh Valley is absolutely critical that kind of people get out and vote in the primary for Greg Edwards. I mean, everything is looking very strong for him right now. But you've got a lot of people running, so you don't know how it's going to shake out. So people, please get out and vote. And I would vote for Edwards. I mean, I think that we need to get behind candidates who are building toward the next phase of our political life.
And one just last word about that.
Yeah.
Fuck John Morganelli.
Yes.
Fuck him. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that video you posted or you shared this week
on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
So basically, John Morganelli on Twitter has a series of tweets congratulating Donald Trump for getting elected, and how come Donald Trump hasn't hired him after he tweeted off to Donald Trump at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's still waiting to hear back from him.
There you go, man. There you go. One of the
and he also goes to Tea Party events.
Yep.
And stuff put on by 9/12 people. Yeah, I mean he's fuck him.
Right. The fact that he's even like, I mean, have you seen any polling that's come out of the 7th?
I have not. I
haven't either. I'm going to look that up at some point while we're talking. But
I think one poll is coming out so far, and it has Morganelli up, and that was last week, or Morganelli like close to the lead. But I mean, a lot of this has to do with ground game too. And is Morganelli's ground game that good?
Yeah.
Or the people, his voters just going to vote for him because he's not the black guy running for office up there in Lehigh Valley.
Man, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. I mean, I think if more, well, let's see. I don't want to kind of say things that I'm not prepared. So it's like if Morganelli wins that, people should be flipping out. Let me say this because Morganelli is the guy's a racist. Right, the guy is.
He's worked with Chris Kobach. He's worked with people from FAIR, the immigration networks.
Right, exactly. I mean, he's
these white nationalist groups.
Yeah, and I can't even believe this. I mean, and some of this, like I said, some of this has to do with some of the legacy of the political atrophy in the Lehigh Valley because of the way the districts have been cut up. And frankly, this is what I've said for a long time is one of the failings of the Democratic Party in the Lehigh Valley. Just basically, just to kind of go over the same narrative about how it's a conservative area and blah, 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 without ever realizing that, no, really what the problem is the way that it's gerrymandered, right? And so they've equated like election victory with kind of political ideological leanings of people in the area, and now we're paying the price for it, right? So the very fact that Greg Edwards is even that he's got a he's being challenged is remarkable, given if you've ever lived or spent any time in the Lehigh Valley. So
yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what goes on. So meanwhile, out in the on the other end of the state,
why don't we talk about Dom Costa?
Yeah, why don't we talk a little about Dom Costa? So we'll talk about the Costa machine too as well. I think this is part of this discussion. Is that one of the things that we
and the DSA all three of these subjects are going to be
right
intertwined because some good old Democrats out there in Pittsburgh have their jocks in a bunch because the DSA candidates are winning.
Yeah, and the news broke this week too that just 2 days ago on Wednesday,
the progressive who's running out there named Dom Costa,
oh God,
is now running a writing campaign for the Republican ballot line.
Right, because he's basically locked in this really tight race with Sarah Innamorato, and she is, again, it's very hard in statewide races, right? Especially in primaries, because the polling is really, it's
all about who's turning people out.
Right, it's all about who's turning people out. So, what we know at the very least is that Costa is freaking out that he might actually lose the Democratic nomination. And this shows to me that he probably is going to lose. Well, at least I think that's what his people are telling him, right? Because there's been some national stories now that have come out, and they're basically showing that is that you got Sarah Innamorato, right, and Summer Lee. Summer Lee is actually running against what Costa was his cousin, right? Yes, Paul Costa, right, is running against another Costa. Right. I remember there's a Jay Costa too as well. Who's a Senate leader. Right. Who is good at what he does. Right. Well, I'm just saying. Right. They're all Costas. Is all I'm saying. And so you got this political family in the state, right? That's connected to the machine, right? And we should say has been connected to the labor movement, right? In parts, right? Particularly out west. It's sucking up all the fucking labor endorsements because Labor, God forbid, if Labor endorses a radical candidate in this time of Janus. Well, this is just it, right? I mean, they got the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO endorsement, right? Dom Costa did, right? And the other causes. They got the SEIU endorsement from out that way, right? I don't know if they got the endorsement from the Teamsters out there, but I know that he's been close with them in the past. And look, I get it. I've been part of the labor movement long enough to know that why these things take place and how it's valued in the labor movement when people have stood up for you in the past, right? That you kind of come back and kind of support them kind of moving forward, right? That's the normal. And I've always had a problem with that model, right? That the fact that we're always kind of thinking about this internal thing. And again, this has to do with the way that labor has operated in this state too as well, is that it operates with the kind of the leadership kind of being kind of for the most part separated from the membership, right? And the leadership kind of making deals behind the scenes and trying to figure out how they're going to best politically maneuver to put them in a position where they're going to get their favors back. And that's how, that's in part about the way that it's worked in the past. But at the very least is what we're seeing out around the Pittsburgh area with Sarah Innamorato and Summer Lee, right, and a range of other candidates across the state, is that, look, we have to start thinking about the people that are most connected to the movements, right? We have to start thinking about the people who are connected to building for a post-Janus world. And I'll submit to you right now, I do not believe that these folks who have been sitting in those seats for a long period of time, who've been helping reinforce the status quo to keep that moving forward, is what we need moving forward. Right. And so, the fact that you've got Sarah Innamorato, she's coming out and she and Summer Lee are both virtually tied in terms of fundraising when it comes to with their races and they're all doing this through small dollar donations too. Exactly. Right. It's the model. And, again, Sean and I have met both of them out at the. We interviewed Yes.
Sarah Namarato, Summer Lee, and Elizabeth Fiedler, who looks like she is poised to win her primary. Looks like her primary is going really well in South Philadelphia. We'll see how that goes. But, she's been getting a lot of attention. She's been getting a lot of the endorsements, a lot of the big labor endorsements. It'll be interesting to see how those political lines break down, or if she's able to crack through the Philadelphia machine. But it looks like all three of those women are poised to win their seats on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know what? I'm glad you said that again, Sean, because I'm going to put a link to that in the and I think we should push that out again too as well. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, because that was those great interviews that you did with them. But let me go back to where Sean started. Sean started with the fact that, look, Costa, because he's worried about this race, has now started sending out a mailer, right? Trying to get Republicans to vote for him, because this is a heavily Democratic district, right? And there are no Republicans who have announced that they were going to be put in for this, right?
And this cross filing is a normal practice, but it's not done this late in a close primary.
That's exactly the deal, right?
This is usually done like a couple months ahead of, hey, write in, Brian Cutler, blah blah blah, for the Democrat to cross. So they secure both sides.
Yep.
Of the ticket. Like they do that in seek of supporting, of locking their opponents out from gaining the other side.
Yep.
But they do it. Yeah, I mean, you do it to shore victory. You don't do it to make sure you stay in the race to the end of the election.
Yep. And he's going on and this flyer that it comes out basically says, write in Dom Costa. Like since 2008, Dom has prided himself on serving all residents of the 21st district at a time when politicians are too often placing party over people. Now more than ever, we need leaders, proven, experienced leaders in Harrisburg. Right, that's the line that he's come out in his mailer, and I think the important thing is what you just said there. If anybody's voted in local elections, you see this cross filing in kind of many instances, in part because people aren't that involved with politics in a local level, right?
And also, like last year, Eric Papenfuss cross filed in Harrisburg, the mayor spot, so he can lock his opponent out from being in the primary on the ballot in the final years. Like that's probably why you do it, is to make sure you seize total control of victory and you don't have to have a serious race.
Right, exactly.
In November. Because the elections are decided. This election will be decided on Tuesday because of how the districts are drawn.
Exactly.
And they're these old Democrats that live by this bullshit. Oh, well, if we didn't vote for the abortion ban, people wouldn't reelect us back in the district, and you would get Republicans elected, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to have a Republican elected. You'll just want someone who listens to you 50% of the time instead of 0% of the time. How about that? Like, I actually heard a chief of staff say this to a bunch of people, because Cal Tadrone's chief of staff a couple weeks ago say this to a bunch of people, and you're like, well, if he didn't vote for this, this would be used against him, and you might get someone who wouldn't want to listen to you at all instead of don't want to listen to you 80% of the time.
Right.
And that's their thinking. It's like, no, fuck that shit. These districts are drawn in such a way where Republicans cannot win.
Yep. And so I think about the fact that,
and this is the type of person we're
Yeah. I'm thinking about what I want to say.
This is the type of person that we're standing up for, like in the Democratic Party, is
right. And I think, and well, here's the thing, right?
And people
there's a portion of this which is about just the kind of like the hubris of it, right? That the idea that, like, okay, if I'm going to lose my nomination from my party, right? So I'm at the last minute, right? Just like you said, I'm not going to go to the Republican Party early on so I can get on the ballot. No, it's a desperation move at the last minute to have a write-in campaign. And my understanding is he has to have at least 300 people write his name in order to secure his place on the ballot. It's the same kind of move that Arlen Specter did. It's the same kind of move that Joe Lieberman did, right? When he didn't get his party's nomination, right? As a way to try to use name recognition as a way of of getting elected, right? And that's again, this kind of power politic that is about keeping the machine keeping the status quo as it is. And again, when I look at it from a labor perspective, we don't have it moving forward. And, again, in the interviews that you heard with Sarah Innamorato, and you heard with
these people are straight up working class people.
Bingo. Right, you're talking Sarah Innamorato, right? She basically, because like Dom Costa's, championed this idea about his kind of opioids legislation. Sarah Innamorato lost her dad to the opioid crisis, right? It's like this is her heart and soul, right? What did she do? What does she do now? She runs a nonprofit organization that's training women how to run for office, right? She's been part of this community, right? And she's been part of working class communities, and that's where she works. And the fact is that she's building from the ground up, small dollar donations, right? That is what we're going to need going forward. And what she said to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette after finding out about this mailer that Costa said, she says, quote, "On the one hand, it's deeply troublesome that a 10-year Democrat incumbent to court Republicans in a last-ditch effort to hold on to power," said Mrs. Innamorato, a consultant for a nonprofit group and government agencies, blah, blah, blah. Quote, "On the other hand, Representative Dom Costa must be worried if his backup plan is abandoning the Democratic Party. As a Democrat who is currently his constituent, I find it shocking." Right? And I think that is the absolute appropriate response. Right, he wants to kind of have the family machine of the Costa kind of move forward right there. And so
if Costa wins as a Republican, right, gets on the ballot and wins in November as a Republican, does he caucus with the Republicans?
Right, exactly. Right, how does that work? Right, how does that work?
So you're just going to caucus with the Democrats?
Well, here's what I'm wondering. Okay, so I got
or he's going to try to use this as a way if he gets reelected, and it's like a. It's like a few House members. You stiffen the majority by you dwindle that majority down to 5 or 10 seats. Which is a realistic goal for the Democrats. And then his vote on either side becomes that much more important. Then he can milk a deal on whose side he wants to be on.
Yep. Yep, and we'll see how this moves forward. I mean, and part of what again, we've been following like Sarah Innamorato, Summer Lee, and Fiedler for a while now, right? And their campaigns are exciting, they're energized. We've talked to people who worked on their campaigns, right? And the work that they're doing is astounding. Right, and so put this back on the front burner for me again. Other than the primary, we're going to talk about this anyway this week. But then yesterday, I get an email from my union, ABSCUF, right, with ABSCUF's endorsements moving forward. And I got to say, number one, I was not expecting that to come forward, right? I was not even thinking about it, right? And the endorsements come forward, and my union ABSCUF has endorsed Dom Costa, right, and Paul Costa. Right, in this nomination. Now, look, let me say this, because I've been back and forth with people on Facebook on this one, right? Other members of my union telling me how, I just don't understand politics, basically, right? Which is laughable, whatever here. But, I always appreciate when I get messages that say things like, well, we're a union and we're not all Democrats, and I would like to have someone who's progressive too as well. I would like to have somebody blah, 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 who does, but we can't always do this. We have to make decisions just upon education and labor, and that's it. As if I don't know that, right? And as if, but the question that is out there, I mean, first, I'll put that aside, right? So, and these are people who know who I am. They know what I've done. They know how I talk about politics, whatever. They don't like my politics, apparently. That's fine, right? But it does say that we've got a lot of work to do in our own unions. And I don't mean just ABSCUF here. I mean the SCIU out there in Pittsburgh, who was also went out and endorsed Dom Costa once again. The other kind of brothers and sisters across the state who have been endorsing them, right? And in my mind, it's not as if this is not such a clear-cut case in which you have one candidate who's stood behind education and public education and labor stuff and is bad on some other issues, and a different candidate who's anti-education or is not so good or does have no platform whatsoever.
And is voted to ban abortions at 20 weeks.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The argument that comes from my union, you'll get this from other organizations too as well, is look, we got to focus on our issues. We cannot focus on these other issues. So even though Costa has voted for kind of anti-immigrant legislation that's basically has kind of causing all sorts of uproars, that actually he only turned back after his office was protested and occupied for his votes on the anti-immigration legislation, right? As if I don't have students, right, who are immigrants, who are going to be directly affected as part of this, right? And also the fact that he voted for the 20-week abortion ban, right? When it was first came out, he didn't vote it the second time around because it was getting a little bit too close to election time, right? The first time around, he was supportive of it, and we pushed back against him then too as well, right? And I'm being told, "Whoa, we can't look at those issues, even though I would like to, whatever." All right, even if, right, we're going to take that very, very narrow understanding of the way that we should engage in politics, which that's a whole different conversation. Even in that, if you're looking just at educational policy and things like this, it's not a clear-cut case, right? Sarah Innamorato has called openly, right, for free education for all, right? She has aligned herself with the line for the Pennsylvania Student Power Network, right? She's behind all these things, right? So this is not a situation in which you have someone who has no education policy and hasn't thought about that, or who would not be an ally to labor. I mean, it's unthinkable that would be the case if she gets elected, right? So in my mind, it's the question of, like, what do you do in this scenario? Now, again, I understand, and again, I told you this about before the show today. I don't want to jump to these conclusions, right? Because I haven't gone through all the endorsements to find this out, so I don't know. Like, because there's several races, for example, like on Reading, Manny Guzman, right, who's a former Kutztown University student, right, who was out there with us, kind of leading the charge and helping organize around the budget issues when the budget cuts came down. He was one of the most eloquent and important speakers that we had as a student leader on our campus. He went back to his home in Reading, and now he's been running for office and working politically on the ground, and he is running for office right now against a sexual abuser, right, we should say. And Manny Guzman did not get the endorsement of Abscuff, right? Now, that doesn't – but Abscuff didn't endorse at all in that race. Now, that just might be because there's no challenger. That might mean because, there's materials that went out and then Manny Guzman didn't return them, right? So they don't know, they didn't endorse. I don't know. I have no idea what the reason is for that. So that's what I need to look into more. But my point is that this was a unanimous decision by our union's political action committee, right? And so it was only the unanimous decisions they put forward. So were there other ones that were not unanimous, right? Where you just chose not to endorse, right? In my mind, this would be the perfect race to say, you know what? We should not be endorsing in the primary for this one, right? Yes, I recognize that would make things a little bit uncomfortable, and Dom Costa might be upset by that. But if you are worried about upsetting the feelings of a politician, you're already on the wrong side of this issue. Right? We should be saying what is going to be the best interest of the union long term. And again, this is where I'm going to have differences with people in unions on this one, right? And my union and other unions too as well, is that we're basically, it is not in the long interest of the union to continue the status quo when we've got challengers who are working with people and organizing the next generation of activists that we are going to need moving forward in a post-Janus world. Right, the legislators who kind of pass very important legislation about dogfighting, right, don't necessarily indicate kind of their ability to kind of organize people and turn people out and organize moving forward, right? What we're facing right here is nonetheless as a sea change of official labor politics in this state, right? And I can never. Here's a perfect example. So I don't think I've spoken about this before, but. You had the. I remember the budget rallies, right? I remember the budget rallies in the wake of
Corbett.
Of Corbett, yeah, and after Wisconsin, right? And some of those massive rallies that took place, and I was there for the labor rallies, right? I was there kind of both as a participant and covering for Raging Chicken, and I'm not. Why can't I think of the dude's name? The AFL-CIO, Frank. What's his name?
Frank Snyder.
Frank Snyder. Right, so I'll never remember that. I'll never forget this day where I'm sitting there on the steps of the Capitol, and there's all these union members who are watching these significant cuts, kind of being thrown in their face, right? And they're watching what's happening in Wisconsin. They're watching what's happened across the country as union members occupied their state capitals, right? And I'm standing there in the crowd with, again, I'm. Not just one particular union. There were steel workers, there were Teamsters, there were mine workers, there were teachers, and people are crowded up, and people were ready to go in and occupy the Capitol. And I'll never forget that as Frank Schneider standing up there, right, giving his speech, and everyone's like, yeah, like rah, rah, rah speech about what we need to do to go forward, and we need to be prepared to bring the fight, and we need to be, and everyone's all riled up, right? And all the cameras are on him, right? The cameras go off, right? Union members start saying, let's go in, let's go in, let's go in. And Schneider waves them off. No, we're done. Come on, come back over here. Right? All show for the cameras. All show for that insider game. And what I heard from union members that I was standing next to, they were so pissed. Right? It was a combination of being pissed that they weren't going in there and feeling dejected. Like, oh, we're just being asked to kind of put on a performance here, and then we're going to leave it to them again. Right? That is not a model that is going to work moving forward. Right? That is not the model, right? Or that is the model that is putting the AFL-CIO, the statewide, in financial jeopardy, right? Because they were losing members as opposed to gaining them. That is the model that will continue the path of kind of destruction of the labor movement in this state. And we are not going to do that again. So brothers and sisters, both in my union and in unions across this state, is we've got our work cut out for us, right? Again, and I recognize this is just one race that we're talking about in terms of Dom Costa, but that's brought to the fore again what it is. And, again, and just like I was told on Facebook, just like you will be told as you kind of push within your union, is that you just don't understand things. You just don't understand the complexity of it. Like, we had a really important conversation, blah, 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 right? I know how that works, right? And that is a legitimate decision that you decided on. That is a legitimate decision. I get it, right? But I don't think that's what we need to move forward. And this is where kind of those of us who are kind of in the activist wing of our movements are kind of going to need to step up. So... yeah, it's frustrating, Sean. It's frustrating. Yeah.
So, another thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
You know that Sarah Inmorado and Summer Lee are both endorsed by the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America.
Say it isn't so, Sean.
And out in Pittsburgh over the past year, DSA's actually had some other victories against the Costa and other political machines out there, and one of them was getting this district judge elected named Meek Pappas, and he's sort of doing like the same thing like Krasner's doing, getting rid of cash bail and other reforms like that, going out, not caving to landlords in landlord-tenant issues, and really causing a stir out there in Pittsburgh. And so someone wrote a letter to the editor out in the Post-Gazette called Dems. Reject this game by the Democratic Socialists of America.
The game,
and so
is that game the game that I have in my hand here? Rise Up, the game of people in power, Sean?
So I'm going to pick this up in the middle, middle of the second paragraph of this letter.
Yeah, go.
It's only three paragraphs long. The guy spends a bunch of time complaining about DSA people, blah, 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 and, we already have good Democrats out here, the whole spiel. He said, why would we let the Democratic Socialists of America discredit their efforts? Democrats, the good Democrats. Why should we let those who have said they wouldn't be Democrats if they thought they could win as independents tell us who to vote for? Let us be frank. DSA candidates are in our party only because they can't win without us, so why are we playing their games? And then he goes on to say in the last paragraph, I agree. We have a real chance to make a difference. We have a chance in Allegheny County to take out Tea Partyist Keith Rothfuss and a true opportunity to win back a seat once held by progressive Jim Furlow. But we also have good Democrats who have stood by us for years who should not be thrown to the wayside by extremists. I will not let this group dictate my vote. I will be sticking by our Democrats who have stood by us. I hope you do too.
You mean those good Democrats that would like to ditch the Democratic Party and run on a Republican ticket because they're not going to stay in power? Those Democrats? That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's not like naming these good Democrats by name, but there's two prominent races out in Western Pennsylvania with DSA candidates involved, and the two good Democrats this guy's talking about are Dom and Paul Costa.
There you go. That's what we have. So, let's can we just review something for a second, Sean?
Sure. What's that?
Let's just say, like, the game that's being played. Can we just start from the framework of, like, the Democrat and Republican parties, right, have instituted and been part of producing legislation, right, that makes it extraordinarily difficult.
They're virtually locked out. Third parties.
We have a duopoly of political parties in this country. That is the game.
This is going back to, like, July 4th, 1776, pretty much, right?
Well,
like that.
No, actually, this happened later.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Let's remember that that our founding fathers were kind of anti-party.
Oh, I thought they had like two parties there. You had the Whigs and you had the.
No, you had factions. Right, but they warned against faction in the Constitution. Right, they warned against faction in the Federalist Papers. Right, and matter of fact, and they were kind of and Washington refused to run on a political party because he said that we should not kind of like be held, to these games of political parties. It was only when Jefferson ran and you had this kind of Jefferson and Adams. We basically had this huge like disagreement over how the way forward is when you started having the organization these kind of parties put together. But there's been fluctuation between that. But in the modern era, is that the Democratic and Republican parties have maintained this kind of like this lockout of third parties, right? And the way that our system is produced, the game is that if you want a chance of actually winning, what you have to do is you have to be part of a party mechanism that is going and then convince enough people within that party to one join the party and vote for you in the primaries, right? And to change the platforms of the direction, right?
And really, it's to get people to get interactive with politics,
right,
on the primary level.
Right, but these are people that want to make party politics about identity politics. And I don't mean like identity like in gender and stuff. I mean like you have to identify as a Democrat, as a donkey, or you identify as an elephant, a Republican, right? That kind of identity, like party identity politics.
You can't call yourself a socialist.
Dude, that's what I mean. Is like as opposed to the Democrats want to say that on the one hand, people like that, I should say, not all Democrats, but people like that want to say like the Democrats are a big tent party, blah, blah, blah. But right, as long as you play by the rules that we set. Right, and the fact is that Sarah Innamorato and Summer Lee, right, and
are playing by the rules.
They're playing by the rules, right, and they're winning the game, and that's what they don't like.
Yes, they're playing by the rules that have been set forth and brought upon them.
Exactly.
They still have to register, they still have to file, they still got to pay the same fees, and they still have to fundraise money.
Right, and you know what? These are the same people, right, that they start crying crocodile tears if a third-party candidate run and stripped away some of the vote. Right? Then they'd be like, "Where you going out? You had no chance to win, and you took away our votes." Right? They're the same. It's the same people, right? This is only an argument or convenience. It has nothing to do with the reality of the way politics actually get played in this country or this state.
And you know why this guy's upset?
Please do tell.
Because he's upset because he's losing. They are losing the game.
Yes,
exactly. that they set up.
Yeah. Let's see. They had all the cards. Right? They've got the jump start of incumbency, and they're still losing the game, and it's not fair. It's not fair. It's just what's happening to white men everywhere, Sean. We had a good thing going, and now they want to take it away.
And you know what the funny thing is? Like, most of these people who are DSA members wouldn't describe themselves as socialists, but they would describe themselves, like me, as a New Deal Democrat.
Yeah.
Which is apparently asking for too fucking much.
Well, look,
in 2018.
Right. I mean, we've talked about this before, right? Like with Lily Geismer's book, with Thomas Frank's book, about the history of what happened to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left that behind them, right, and embraced this whole other third wayism of the kind of the.
Oh, well, he's a doctor, class. So he should. He's a doctor. He should be able to.
But he's a doctor
to get office.
Michelle Wolf, I love that. I got to pull that sound because, but he's a doctor, right?
Yeah,
perfect.
We are. Yeah. The credentials matter more than the people running, if they're experienced or not.
Right, exactly. Or again, this whole idea,
which is like the exact opposite of what Republicans have been doing.
Right.
They're running some of the least fucking credentialed people who, can actually connect with people on a one-on-one level because they know how rhetoric works and how to run elections, and they win because they're not running on credentials.
Right, exactly.
Credentialism.
credentials don't work. I mean, if anything, that should have taught. We should learn that lesson, or Democrats should have learned that lesson hard in the last election.
But she was the most credentialed president.
Well, it's true, right? I mean, she did. She had more experience than anybody who's ever run
US
for that
Senator,
office.
Department of State, Secretary of State,
hands down, right? Hands down. And the thing is that, and again, I mean, you can't argue with that, right? She's
credentialed. You don't want to lose to that fucking idiot, do you?
Right, exactly. But again, this is not. I mean, in my mind, this is not about Hillary Clinton, right? It's about the mentality of the Democrats. They thought that was enough. Right, they thought the resume
hold my
was enough.
credentials and vote for me.
Right, and it's not.
Like that will do the messaging itself. Oh,
right.
Well,
I mean, let's remember that like there was enough of there were enough in the Democratic Party that believed that the credentials enough were going to win, and there was no way that anybody would elect Donald Trump. That we didn't see the ground game. We didn't see the follow up on their data analysis by actually putting boots on the ground and having people do door knocking stuff until it was way too late.
Didn't have people in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And again, as much as like, you know, I read what I've been reading a lot about this stuff lately, but I mean, I know, look,
or listening to books.
Well, yeah, exactly. Cheating. I know that there were strong Hillary supporters that were out there and they were knocking doors. They were doing all the campaigning stuff. I know that. Right. But I can also say that I know that there were huge swaths of the state, right, who were actively calling both the statewide Democrats and the kind of the national Hillary campaign, trying to get things like yard signs or trying to get some support for call center stuff like this, and could not get it until it was way too late. They were running campaigns out of their front yard, like under little freaking tarp tents, right? I mean that's disgusting. Right. And again, I don't fault Hillary for that. But I do fault the party that believes that this kind of like this professional class crap is what wins. If you want to win, you have to kind of win with organizing, and you have to constantly be thinking down the road about what are we going to do. The Republican Party has been doing that for 40 years. They're asking, how do we build? How do we build to that next thing? And is it uncomfortable sometimes? You bet it is. But you know what? Is like if you're in it to win it, like, and I don't mean just an election cycle, right? So that you can keep your guy in their office. I'm talking about win the game in turning progressive politics in this state, right, and nationwide. You got to play a different game, right? The rules that you set and are losing on your own rules. The rules are wrong. Time to reset the game, folks. But crazy, man.
Good Democrats, though.
Good Democrats. Yes, where I've got a sticker that they sent me one year that said like "proud to be a Democrat." And I'm like, that's not how I think about politics, right?
I'm not proud to be a Democrat.
I just don't think about politics in that way. I'm not like proud to be a member of a party as much as like, you know, I'm looking for like to be involved.
I mean, I'll go in on every November to just hit the straight Democratic ticket.
No,
I am a lever puller. I am not afraid to admit that. I go in there in November and just hit the straight D ticket, walk in, answer the ballot questions, and walk out. Like, I am not going to like stand there. Who's going to actually make my life better here?
Yeah,
this guy on the Democratic ticket who've been voting.
Yes, exactly. And most people don't do that. They don't walk into there and it becomes a holy place, right? Yeah. Where they're like, oh, now is decision time.
No, my decision's been made up for a while. Boom, hit that straight D ticket, walk in, walk out.
Right. And look,
go on with the day.
That doesn't mean that people aren't sure about certain things and are unsure and comes down to the last minute. I get that. Right?
I mean, primaries are where I actually have to think about who I'm going to vote for. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly true. So I mean that's kind of where we're going, and I think that you know, whatever. A point from me, what this whole thing kind of points to is like, you know, again, the organizing that's been going on the ground, right? Stuff that came out of Indivisible, that came out of the Women's March, that's come out of the DSA organizing, that's been coming out of the kind of the resistant movement. That is really where, and I don't mean hashtag resistance.
Lancaster stands up.
Right, Lancaster stands up. I mean, you know, these are the organizations. This is the future. And, you know, when I look at this and I look at what labor has to decide this, right, is that even if we were going to accept the fact that there's going to be a blue wave, right, a big blue wave at 2018, the question is, which side of the wave do you want to be on, right? Which side of the wave do you want to be on? You want to be on the side of the wave that, you're going to be sit there on your little boogie board and you're going to get a little push as you kind of move down a little bit? Or do you want to be on the side of the wave that's going to carry you into the shore? That's what you got to decide. Which side of the wave, the blue wave, do you want to be on, folks? Right? And I want to go into shore. I don't want to just kind of like be able to stay out in the water for a little while, right? And hope that I get a little bit closer this time. Nope. Because that breeze is going to come and it's going to blow you right back out to sea. So. Anyways, I want to give a shout out. We're going to shift gears a little bit here. I want to give a huge shout out. I'm so psyched. Lou Ryan is back aboard Raging Chicken Press. You may recall Lou Ryan. She was writing for us for a while. Then she moved out to Pittsburgh and she had to work up there. So basically, she had to step back and she just had way too much work to do. But I've been back and forth with her. She's been sending me some stuff. You see, we've been publishing on Raging Chicken Press her stuff. And I said, hey, look, if you're covering these events and you're doing this, why don't if you want to come back aboard? I mean, you got a wide open door. And she's like, definitely. So she's been following this awesome story out in the Pittsburgh area, right? About this Penn Plaza and this public process. It's all about kind of gentrification and some kind of shady stuff that's going on. Just to give you a flavor of it, if you haven't kind of read it before. So here's the first kind of the lead-in paragraphs. So community organizers welcomed the public to Eastminster Presbyterian Church on April 16th with live music and a chorus of "Housing for All, Housing for All." The upbeat music made the phrase sound like a promise of what was inside. It was a glimpse of the future community organizers are calling for, where vulnerable residents don't have to worry about getting displaced yet again. But inside, community members faced yet another breakdown of the public process in their fight for affordable housing. They were at the second two public meetings of LG Realty's plans to develop a site in East Liberty that used to contain 312 units of affordable housing. Representatives from LG Realty were supposed to respond to questions about the plan that were raised at the first public meeting and field further questions for the community. For the first hour or so, that's what happened. But then the meeting lost track of LG Realty's plan. Instead, it evolved into a discussion about the general issue of affordable housing in Pittsburgh. So you had all these folks that were out there and these organizations that have been working on the ground for a long time. Like Penn Plaza Support in Action. You had the Transit Revitalization Investment District. That's that part of the area. You had the Northside Coalition for Fair Housing. You had all sorts of folks that are showing up there basically to demand fair housing, and like seeing this kind of turnout has been incredible. So I encourage you, get over to Raging Chicken Press and check out Lou's article. She's going to have another one up. She just sent it to me this morning, so we'll have that posted out later on today about a follow up for that. And welcome her back, folks. You see her articles up there. Tell you that you're happy that she's back. I'm thrilled because I love her writing, and she does great on the ground reporting too as well. So kudos and welcome back, Lou. Last thing, I just want to give a shout out. So shout out of sorts, I guess. This just came up in my Twitter feed this week, and I was like, oh my God. All right. There's this guy, his name, I don't know if people know this guy. His name is Jordan Peterson. Okay. He's this kind of like obscure Canadian psychologist who's turned into this kind of right-wing celebrity.
Oh, he was on Bill Maher a few weeks ago.
Yes, he was. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Right. He has got the #1 best-selling nonfiction book on Amazon right now that's called like the 12 Rules for Living or something like this. And so he's on this book tour. So it looks like a self-help book kind of thing like this. But here's the thing. This guy, he's doing this tour with, hold on, let me pull up his stuff. He's doing this tour with, what's the dude's name? We were just talking about him. I'm looking for too much stuff at this one point. Sorry. With Dave Rubin, right? Dave Rubin, he kind of has this show called The Rubin Report. He's this right-wing kind of like neo-right guy, right? Kind of like alt-left or alt-right curious, that kind of thing. And as part of, this quasi-intellectual, right? I have to say that. Let's get it. The New York Times just actually had a piece that was out there kind of saying that the intellectuals of the dark web, right? Which is kind of a funny thing, like as they talked about in the Majority Report, because these people have national platforms, right? And have like people writing and give them all sorts of money. So not exactly obscure folks. But this guy, so basically what this guy has done in this self-help book, Jordan Peterson, has basically taken super reactionary ideological positions on gender, race, all sorts of things, and turned it into this self-help book that's targeted at, primarily white, kind of primarily like disaffected, kind of like video game kids.
Incels.
Right? What's that?
Incels.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then there you go. So let me just this is a piece from the from Vox, right? And I have to say, I said that Zach Beauchamp did a good job in kind of breaking some of this down. So here's what Beauchamp writes. So Jordan Peterson is also a right-wing internet celebrity who has claimed that feminists have an unconscious wish for brutal male domination, referred to developing nations as pits of catastrophe in a speech to a Dutch far-right group, and just last Tuesday threatened the social critic Panjak Mishra, or Pankaj Mishra, who'd written a serially critical essay on Peterson. He threatened him with physical violence over Twitter. Quote, "If you were in my room at the moment, I'd slap you happily," is the direct quote, right? So this guy has got he's got a huge following, right? He's got like 560,000 people follow him on Twitter, over 1 million YouTube subscribers, right? And if I don't have time to get into all the specifics of this guy's stuff, right? But this guy he's writing like the most reactionary, like anti-woman stuff that's out there, and it's a #1 selling book on Twitter on Amazon, because it's not couched as that. Right? It's the game that the right has been playing, folks. And it's exactly the game that they've been playing. So why am I telling you about Jordan Peterson right now? Well, because Jordan Peterson, we are lucky enough to say that Jordan Peterson is going to come to Pennsylvania. Yes, he will be appearing at the Tower Theater in Upper Darby with Dave Rubin on May 23rd. Right? So
Put in your calendar, folks.
What's that?
Put it in your calendar.
Put in your calendar, folks, because as Seth Gorka would say, pajama boys. I think it'd be great to show up to kind of welcome little Jordan Peterson and his sexist grap with a little kind of welcome ceremony. Maybe show up in our pajamas, right, just to get it going. So check this guy out. There's a link to the Vox article in there. If you don't know this, folks, you don't know Dave Rubin, and if you don't know Jordan Peterson, get aware of who these folks are, because they are having a huge influence on especially younger males today. So that's what we got going. Oh, good. Jordan Peterson in Upper Darby at the Tower Theater, May 23rd. So anyways, I don't know. Anything else going around the state, Sean?
Nope.
Sean's like, let's get out of here. I'm the go. All right, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. I want to remind you to become a member of Raging Chicken Press. I want you to go to patreon.com/rcpress and become a member for as little as $5 a month. We'll be right back with Let's Go. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Over the past 6 years, we've brought unapologetic, progressive, activist media to Pennsylvania and beyond. We've helped hold those in power accountable and shine a light on some amazing activist work. We've broken national stories and established a reputation as an aggressive, independent media site. As newsrooms close and traditional journalists lose their jobs, hard-hitting, investigative news suffers. If we care about our democracy, we have to find new, sustainable models of journalism. And frankly, no one's going to do it for us. After the Trump election, we dug in even deeper. Thanks to some longtime members, one-time donations, and a shift in other resources, we brought on more writers and started paying them. Now we're doubling down and want to expand our infrastructure and pay our writers even more. We need to invest in our media if we have a chance to resist the unprecedented assault on democracy, working families, women's rights, and our planet. History will remember the choices we make today. So take a minute to become a member of Raging Chicken Press. For as little as $5 a month, the price of a local craft beer or a cup of coffee, you will be supporting homegrown progressive journalists and media activists. Go to RagingChickenPress.org and click on the Support and Membership tab to become a member. Leave a one-time donation or learn about other ways that you can help. We don't have billionaire backers. Keeping progressive, activist media going strong depends on you. Thank you for all your help and support. Keep up the fight.
Space Force. Space is a war-fighting domain, just like the land, the air, and sea.
Yes, everybody. Once again, it is time for Last Call. Yes, that was once again the Gregory brothers doing their Donald Trump Space Force mix-up. Sean just left the room. I was playing space stuff. But, sorry we kept you so long today, folks. But just some quick things. A couple kind of quick takes in space news this week is kind of interesting. They've had the first ever launch of interplanetary launch from California, from the West Coast, and you have these CubeSats, which people haven't seen them. They're these kind of small cubes, hence cube satellites that they're sending off to Mars, and they have they're called the Marcos. And basically, they have this communication thing back and forth where they ping, right? They ping each other. The satellites ping back to Earth, and then Earth pings back to the satellite as a way to kind of stay in touch, right? And the whole thing's they're called Marcos, and so the ping back is called Polo, so it's Marco Polo. Very, very funny. But that's just kind of interesting thing. Those are going to be headed towards Mars, and some cool stuff on that. One of the things I wanted to highlight this week is that there's actually space workers on strike. Talk about the next generation of kind of where we're going to head here. So there's nearly 600 union workers at the United Launch Alliance, the U.S. government's primary rocket launch provider, went on strike May 6th, just a day after the company launched a lander to Mars for NASA. Right. So this is it's been kind of incredible to see. And then if you look at the United Launch Associates, right? So, I mean, you look at United Launch Associates, what is that? So you might think it's a poor little company that's having trouble kind of getting its, money together and all that. That's why it can't pay its workers or wants to force workers to kind of travel around the country unnecessarily. Well, no. United Launch Alliance is a joint venture between Lockheed Martin Space Systems and Boeing Defense Space and Security. All right? Two monolith, huge, multi-billion-dollar corporations for United Launch Alliance, and they're kind of squeezing their workers. So here you go. It's not going to be the first strike that we ever see in terms of the space industry, but hey, kudos and solidarity to the workers out there kind of on strike. So there you have it. So, Sean, the one thing that we should talk about back here on Earth, so as we have workers on strike for space, we're launching things to Mars, looks like we're kind of getting ready for the Renaissance Fair for real.
Yes. American workers have fewer vacation time than the average medieval peasant.
There you have it. And that is from Business Insider, people.
Real news.
Real news.
Just, you think how much your life sucks, peasants had it better.
Well, there's a great book that's out that just got out by David Graeber. You know that guy? He wrote about Occupy and stuff.
Yes.
Right,
Debt.
Yeah, exactly. So David Graeber's book just came out and talked about bullshit jobs, and talked about how basically more and more of our lives has been just occupied with this bullshit that we just do things for no reason whatsoever and are just forced to churn and keep the work going. Right. So there you have it.
Yeah. I think I got first-hand experience in that.
Yeah. So here it is. So this is from Business Insider. In fact, economist Juliet Shore found that during periods of particular high wages, such as 14th century England, peasants might put in no more than 150 days a year. As for the modern American worker, after a year on the job, she gets an average of 8 vacation days annually. There you have it, folks. So maybe we should start hearkening back to the good old days. As long as we can take our antibiotics with us, man.
Yeah. I mean, no electricity, no work.
Yep. There you go. So there you have it, folks. So if you're feeling overworked and you're feeling a little tired, maybe
Just
that's
think
why.
peasants had it better.
Exactly. Lean into it, man. Like, I think we should bring can we at least get the clothing back?
Bring out your dead.
Yeah, bring out your dad. Bring out your dad. We should be doing that at on campus. Bring that around. Bring out your dad. Oh, crazy. Oh, man. So you got any kind of cool beer news this week?
No, I do not.
No, you do not. Sean wants to get out of here, so he's not even tell us about his visit to Evergreen once again, but that's all right. So what I've got on the agenda today, Free Will, as I mentioned there, has got they have their can release today of Chasing the Dragon. Chasing the Dragon is just fantastic. Every iteration I've have of it is good, and they tweak it every single year. But it is an Imperial IPA. It comes in at 11.2. Boom. And they're selling a 4-pack cans, and it's available in both locations. There, so I'll give you their breakdown of it. The Imperial IPA is bold, assertive, and hop to the highest degree, with top notes of tangerine and grapefruit, followed by pine and a deep, dank, resinous hop finish that we thought only existed in folklore. Right, so that's a fantastic get. Also, they just put this up, I think, this morning, maybe late yesterday, that now they are working on a Dandelion Saison that's in the works. So I'm going to be tracking that. Looking for their schedule this week at Free Will. Both in addition to the Chasing the Dragon release, you're going to have Down to Earth Cafe is going to be in the house, serving up some food. Tomorrow there's going to be beer and Meat Wagon Barbecue will have their food truck there. And on Sunday we'll have beer and the Smoke Factory Barbecue at Free Will. So there you have it, man. That's what I'm looking forward for the week. I do have your multi-pack that I'm going to have to get out to you at some point. Of the amazing sours that Free Will's been producing. So, and I'll tell you, they are awesome. Right?
I cannot wait.
Yeah, I haven't opened my Peachy McPeak now, but I am going to do that while I'm editing this podcast today. So,
nice.
Well,
I know what you'll be doing in 2 minutes.
You got it. 2 minutes. That's my sign. It's time to get the hell out of here, folks. All right, man. So anything else for the good of the order?
No.
Nope. I know he just wants to go. All right, I'm just going to let him go. All right, this is Ben, Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. And, yes, we did go a little long. I'm very, very sorry, folks. We had some things to talk about. I know Sean and I just bored him once again, but sorry. And I'm sorry for all of you out there that I've bored today. But, that's kind of what I do. It's kind of my shtick. So get used to it or just, I don't know. Yes. Right there. All right. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Remember, become a member of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/RCPress. Check out Lou Ryan's new pieces and welcome her back on the pages of Raging Chicken Press. And we look forward to talking to you next week. So in the meantime, I guess we'll get out of here. Maybe. Sean, do you think we should? I don't know. I don't know if we should or not. I think we should maybe stay talk around for a little bit longer, maybe, because I know that how much you look forward to this opportunity every week. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. See ya.